You wake up exhausted, not because you stayed up partying, but because your brain never truly rested. You brush your teeth while answering emails. You eat lunch with one hand and hold your phone with the other. Your calendar is full, your inbox is fuller, and yet somehow you feel like you're falling behind. You tell yourself you just need to work harder, that it's your fault for not being more productive, that if you were better, more focused, more disciplined, you wouldn't feel so overwhelmed. But what if the problem isn't you? What if this exhaustion, this constant busyness is not a sign of your weakness, but evidence of a trap? You've been taught to hustle, to grind, to prove your worth by what you produce. But who profits when you're always producing and never questioning? This is not just a motivational video. This is a wake-up call. Because what you call being productive may just be the most effective form of control ever created. And it's working perfectly because you're too busy to notice. The illusion of progress. Why busyness feels like success. You wake up already behind. Your alarm goes off. You reach for your phone, not because you're curious, but because you're panicked. A tidal wave of emails, messages, updates. The day hasn't started, and yet you already feel late. So you move faster. You brush your teeth while answering emails. You skip breakfast to get ahead on that call. You stare at your screen for 8, 10, 12 hours, barely blinking because you're making progress. But here's the question. Progress toward what? We live in a world that glorifies motion, not purpose, not clarity, just motion. You're taught that doing something, anything, is better than doing nothing, that filling your day is proof of your worth, that empty space is laziness and stillness is a failure. So you move, you fill your calendar, you chase productivity like it's salvation. You think, if I'm busy, I must be important. If I'm tired, I must be making progress. If I don't have time to breathe, I must be on the right track. But busyness is not the same as growth, and exhaustion is not the same as accomplishment. You've been sold a beautiful lie, that the more you do, the more valuable you are, that your self-worth is measured in how many boxes you check, how fast you move, how much you produce. But think about it. If busyness really led to freedom, peace, and joy, why are so many people exhausted, anxious, and numb? Why do so many of us collapse at the end of the day, not fulfilled, but emptied? Here's the hard truth. Busyness feels like success because the system wants it to. Because a person who's always doing doesn't have time to question, doesn't have energy to rebel, doesn't have clarity to realize they're not moving forward, they're running in place. Productivity has become the modern chain. It doesn't rattle like metal. It hums like a calendar alert. It buzzes like your phone at midnight. It whispers, "Keep going, you're not done. Everyone else is working harder than you." But here's what no one tells you. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is stop, breathe, ask, am I chasing my life or someone else's idea of what life should be? Because you see, the real danger isn't failure, it's success in the wrong direction. It's spending years building something you were told to want, only to realize it was never what you truly needed. So the next time you feel proud of being busy, pause. Ask yourself, am I actually building a life? Or am I just running on a treadmill someone else controls? Because motion doesn't mean freedom. It just means you haven't stopped long enough to notice the cage. And the first step out is stillness, a manufactured identity, when productivity becomes who you are. What do you say when someone asks, "So, what do you do?" You answer automatically, I'm a teacher. I run a business. I'm in finance. You list a job title, a role, a function, not a passion, not a belief, not a dream. You describe what you produce, not who you are. And you don't even question it, because this is what you've been trained to do. From the moment you could hold a pencil, you were told to perform, grades, tasks, expectations, be productive, be useful, be exceptional. You were taught that your worth is transactional. You earn praise by working hard. You earn love by being helpful. You earn your place by doing something valuable. So over time, you learned to equate your identity with output. You stopped asking, "Who am I?" and instead asked, "What can I show for myself?" Your value became measured in things you could check off, show off, or stack up. Your self-image became a resume. Your confidence became a calendar. Your existence became a performance. And slowly, silently, you disappeared. Not because you had nothing to offer, but because you forgot how to exist without proving yourself. Every time you rest, you feel guilty. Every time you stop working, you feel less useful. Every time you say, "I don't know what I want," you panic because you've never had time to ask. And that was the point all along. They didn't just want your labor, they wanted your identity. Because once you believe you are your productivity, you will protect the system that exploits you. You'll shame yourself for needing rest. You'll call it slacking off instead of reconnecting. You'll call burnout dedication and overwork grind culture. And here's the most dangerous part. When your identity is built on productivity, failure doesn't just hurt, it destroys you. A missed deadline doesn't feel like a slip, it feels like you're worthless. A rejection isn't a moment, it becomes a mirror. Because if you aren't producing, who are you? But you were never meant to live this way. You were not born to be a machine. You are not here just to generate content, solve problems, or fill quotas. You are not your inbox. You are not your salary. You are not your schedule. You are a soul, a story, a spirit. And when you finally unplug from the noise, when you let go of the need to prove, you'll hear something strange and unfamiliar. Your own voice, the one that was buried under expectations, the one that whispers, "You are enough," not because of what you do, but because of who you are when you're finally still. The origin of the hustle, capitalism's clever evolution. You weren't born hustling. You didn't emerge from the womb needing a planner. You didn't dream of working 70 hours a week or checking Slack on weekends. But somewhere along the way, hustle became noble, grinding became virtuous, and overwork became the modern badge of courage. So where did this come from? The answer isn't in your ambition. It's in your history. Let's rewind. During the Industrial Revolution, society shifted from fields to factories, from natural rhythms to mechanical clocks. Time became currency. Efficiency became God. People who once worked with the sun now lived by the bell. They punched in, punched out, and produced more than ever, not for themselves, but for someone else's empire. Suddenly, your value wasn't in your being, but in how many widgets you could produce in an hour, how many boxes you could check in a day, how replaceable you were in a system that ran on predictability and compliance. And then something even more insidious happened. The factory moved into your mind. Capitalism didn't just want your labor, it wanted your spirit. It wanted to make you believe that hard work, any work, was always good, that the more you sacrificed, the more you deserved, that your exhaustion was proof of your virtue. So they gave it a new name, the American dream, the self-made man, the rise and grind hero. They fed you stories of billionaires who slept 4 hours a night, of CEOs who never took vacations, of moguls who started with nothing and worked harder than everyone else. What they didn't tell you was that most of them inherited wealth, privilege, or opportunity, and that their stories were curated to make you believe that if you're poor, tired, or stuck, it must be your fault. And so you hustled. You filled your life with work. You turned your passion into profit. You monetized your hobbies. You optimized your weekends. All while believing this is freedom. But here's the twisted truth. The hustle culture wasn't built to free you. It was built to keep you occupied, to make you so focused on surviving and climbing that you never stop to ask who built the ladder or where it leads. Because if you ever paused long enough, you might realize the goalposts keep moving. The more you do, the more is expected. The harder you grind, the less you're rewarded. And when you burn out, they replace you and call it progress. This isn't ambition. This is engineered exhaustion. A system designed to keep you tired enough to comply, but hopeful enough to keep chasing. It's not your dream you're chasing. It's theirs. And if you want to reclaim your power, you have to step off the wheel long enough to remember you don't have to earn your humanity by burning it at both ends.
Overworked, undervalued. The burnout model. You're doing everything right. You show up early, you stay late, you skip lunch, you say yes to everything, even when you're drowning. You're productive, reliable, responsible. But at the end of the month, someone else gets promoted. Someone else gets the raise. And you get a pat on the back and more work. You tell yourself it's okay, that next time you'll push harder, that maybe if you just give more, they'll finally see your worth. But they won't, because you were never meant to be rewarded. You were meant to be exhausted. This is not a bug in the system. This is the system. It's called the burnout model, a strategy where companies extract the most energy from you while giving the least in return. They don't invest in your rest. They invest in your guilt. They don't care if you break, only that you break after the deadline. Think about it. The hardest workers are rarely the highest paid. The most loyal employees are often the most replaceable. The ones who sacrifice the most usually get the least. Why? Because burnout isn't seen as a problem. It's a business model. When you're tired, you don't negotiate. When you're overwhelmed, you don't challenge. When you're barely holding it together, you don't ask for more. You just beg for a break. And in a system that values output over people, your collapse isn't a tragedy, it's a cost-saving metric. But here's what makes it even more dangerous. Burnout is invisible at first. It doesn't start with a breakdown. It starts with slowly dimming your light. You stop dreaming. You stop creating. You stop laughing. You become a machine, efficient, predictable, silent. You meet every goal but forget why they mattered. You show up every day but lose touch with who you are. And the scariest part? you start to think this is normal. You say, everyone's tired. You say, that's just how life is. You call it maturity, responsibility, real life. But it's not. It's a slow death of the soul. It's the quiet erosion of your spirit. And it's happening to millions right now under the illusion of success. So if you're tired, you're not alone. And no, rest isn't selfish. Saying no isn't disloyal. Stepping away isn't weakness. It's resistance. Because the moment you stop sacrificing yourself for a system that would replace you tomorrow is the moment you begin to reclaim your worth. Burnout isn't a badge of honor. It's a red flag. You were not born to be efficient. You were born to be alive.
Time theft, how they hijack your hours without you noticing. They never had to break into your house. They didn't need to steal your money or take your freedom with chains. All they needed to do was steal your time. Quietly, strategically, relentlessly. And the worst part? You thanked them for it. Let's be clear. Time is not just minutes on a clock. It's your life in fragments. It's your one non-renewable resource. You can lose money and earn it back, but once time is gone, it's gone. And yet, your hours are bleeding out every single day. Not through laziness, but through designed distraction and engineered obligation. Meetings that could have been emails, emails that should have been nothing. Deadlines that are fake. Tasks that are urgent but never important. And in between it all, 1,000 tiny interruptions that carve up your day like a butcher's knife. You're not working 8 hours. You're stopping and starting 500 times, replying, switching tabs, checking, scanning, switching again. Your brain never enters flow. Your spirit never settles. You're doing a lot, but building nothing. And that's by design. They don't want you to have long stretches of uninterrupted thought, because that's when people wake up. That's when people ask questions. That's when people remember they have dreams, ideas, and agency. So the system steals your time in chunks too small to fight, but big enough to make you feel behind. And when you try to reclaim your hours, they guilt you. Why aren't you responding faster? Can you jump on a quick call? Don't you want to be a team player? As if your value is measured by how available you are, not how alive you are. But here's the most twisted part. They don't need to control your time directly anymore, because they've trained you to do it for them. You check your phone before you breathe in the morning. You scroll instead of resting. You cram every second with productivity or distraction because silence now feels threatening. That's not just time theft. That's mental colonization. They didn't just take your hours. They rewired your habits. They made urgency your religion and taught you that stillness is a sin. But here's your permission slip. You don't owe anyone constant access. You don't need to fill every minute. You don't have to trade your day for digital noise. Because the real flex in this world is owning your time again. Imagine what you could build if you weren't always reacting. Imagine who you could become if your hours belonged to you. Your time isn't theirs to manage. It's yours to protect. So guard it like your life depends on it. Because it does. Attention control, when you can't focus on your own life. Your mind is not broken. It's just been hijacked. hijacked by a system that discovered something far more valuable than your money, your attention. Because in today's world, attention is the new currency. If they can keep your eyes, your mind, your scrolling thumb, they own you. And the most dangerous part? They've made it feel normal. You open your phone to check the time, and 30 minutes later, you're neck deep in a stranger's life. You go online to answer one message and come out hours later, disoriented, overstimulated, empty. You don't remember what you consumed. You just know it consumed you. This isn't random. It's designed. Entire industries are built on keeping you distracted. Billions are spent on making sure you never focus long enough to think for yourself, question the system, or feel the discomfort of your own silence. The longer you stay distracted, the less you notice that your real life is falling apart. Your goals, forgotten. Your ideas, interrupted. Your peace, traded for notifications. Because here's what they don't want you to realize. A distracted mind is a controllable mind. A scattered brain doesn't rebel, it reacts. And you've been trained to react, non-stop, since childhood. React to alerts, to headlines, to opinions, to panic. Everything in the modern world screams, "Look here! Don't miss this! Stay informed! Keep scrolling!" But have you ever stopped to ask, what am I missing in my own life while I'm paying attention to everything else? You see, your focus isn't just a resource, it's your compass. It decides what you build, who you become, and what kind of life you create. And if they can control your focus, they control your future. They don't need to censor your voice if they can flood you with so much noise that you forget what your voice even sounds like. They don't need to trap your body if they can trap your awareness in a loop of endless stimulation. And when your mind is filled with everyone else's priorities, you forget your own. But here's the good news. You can reclaim it. You can retrain your focus like a muscle. You can choose silence over stimulation, creation over consumption, presence over panic. And when you do, you'll feel it. The fog will lift, the noise will fade, and in that sacred stillness, you'll remember what you've been running from all along, your life. Not the online version, not the projected image, but your real, raw, unfiltered existence, quiet, beautiful, and yours. Your attention is your power. Don't give it away like it means nothing, because in a world built on distraction, clarity is rebellion. The guilt of rest, how they taught you to hate silence. You try to rest, but something feels wrong. You lie on the couch, and your mind whispers, "You're wasting time." You go for a walk with no destination, and guilt creeps in. You could be doing something productive. You finally sit still, no screen, no tasks, just you, and suddenly it's unbearable. The silence, the stillness, the absence of progress. You were never taught how to rest. You were taught how to earn it. From a young age, rest was framed as a reward, not a right. Finish your homework, now you can play. Hit your goals, now you can breathe. And so you internalized a rule that has poisoned your soul. I must suffer first to deserve peace later. You began to see rest not as recovery, but as laziness, not as wisdom, but as weakness, not as self-respect, but as selfishness. And you carried this belief into adulthood, wearing exhaustion like armor, burnout like a badge. You bragged about sleeping 4 hours. You glorified being always on. You believed that the more tired you were, the more successful you must be. But here's the cruel trick. They made you feel guilty for resting, so you'd never stop long enough to question the system stealing your life. Because a rested mind thinks clearly. A still heart hears truth. A soul at peace becomes dangerous to those who profit from your chaos. So they demonized rest. They flooded you with productivity porn, morning routines of billionaires, 5 a.m. club, no days off, sleep is for the weak. They told you stories of people who grind while you sleep. They told you there's always someone outworking you, that if you slow down, you'll fall behind. But behind what? Behind whom? They never tell you that, because the finish line doesn't exist. It's a carrot on a string, and the faster you chase it, the further it moves. Meanwhile, your body breaks, your mind fragments, your joy dissolves, and still you feel guilty for stopping. Let this be your awakening. Rest is not a luxury, it is your birthright. You are not a machine to be optimized. You are a living being meant to pause, breathe, and be. You don't need to earn rest. You need to remember it. Remember the version of you before the pressure, before the hustle, before you were told that worth must be proven. That version is still inside you, waiting for permission to exhale. So, here it is. You are allowed to rest, to nap, to say no, to do nothing and feel no shame. Because rest is not the opposite of progress. It is the foundation of it. And in a world addicted to movement, your stillness is an act of rebellion. The myth of multitasking. A mind divided is easily controlled. They told you multitasking was a superpower, that juggling 5 things at once makes you valuable, that being able to split your attention means you're high functioning, that if you can manage more, faster, all at once, you're ahead of the game. But here's what they didn't tell you. The game wasn't built for you to win. Multitasking doesn't make you powerful. It makes you manageable, predictable, distracted, exhausted, but compliant. And worst of all, it fractures your mind. Science has shown it again and again. You can't actually focus on 2 things at once. Your brain isn't doing 5 tasks at the same time. It's switching rapidly between them, burning energy, reducing accuracy, and creating the illusion of productivity. Multitasking feels efficient, but it's mental whiplash. You write an email while in a meeting. You text during dinner. You scroll through headlines while pretending to listen to someone you love. Each time, your brain pays a price. Reduced memory, lower comprehension, diminished emotional presence. And over time, a mind that's always divided forgets how to go deep. You lose the ability to focus on one thing for more than a few minutes, to sit with an idea, to follow a thought to its conclusion, to create rather than just react. This is not an accident, it's architecture, because a divided mind is an obedient mind, a mind that can't stay still, can't rebel. A person always shifting attention never notices the walls closing in. Multitasking has become a tool of control, disguised as ambition. They keep you jumping from task to task, so you never pause long enough to ask, why am I even doing all of this? Does any of it matter? Whose dream am I building, really? In this noise-filled world, depth is danger. Stillness is risk. Because the moment you concentrate, you might remember who you are and what you truly want. That's why they glorify multitasking. It keeps you overwhelmed, underfulfilled, and forever behind on something. But here's the truth they don't want you to realize. Doing more is not the same as living more. Being everywhere is not the same as being present. And spreading yourself thin does not make you whole. You aren't made to fracture yourself for efficiency. You were made to bring your full self, your full attention to the moment, the mission, the meaning. So stop applauding yourself for being constantly divided. Start honoring the power of full presence. Because in a world obsessed with doing everything, the real revolution is choosing to do one thing deeply, fully, and with purpose. Who profits from your hustle? Spoiler, it's not you. You hustle, you grind, you say yes, you stay late, you give everything because you believe that one day it will all pay off. That if you just keep going, if you just keep producing, someone will notice, something will change, success will finally knock. But what if it already did? What if your hard work has already made someone rich, just not you? Let's be clear. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're not behind. You've been strategically misled. You were told that hustle leads to freedom, that grinding leads to greatness, that if you pour your energy, time, and loyalty into the system, it will eventually reward you. But here's what they didn't tell you. The system was never built to make you rich. It was built to make you useful. To companies, to shareholders, to the very people who've trained you to believe that overwork is virtue and rest is weakness. You wear yourself down while someone else watches their profits go up. You sacrifice weekends while someone else buys a third home. You skip vacations while someone else drinks champagne at a leadership retreat. This isn't conspiracy. This is math. The top 1% didn't get rich by working harder than you. They got rich by leveraging people who believe that working harder is the answer. They don't hustle. They systematize. They don't trade time for money. They build systems that extract your time and convert it into their money. You don't get equity. You don't get ownership. You get a paycheck, just enough to keep you coming back, never enough to truly walk away. And when you burn out, they replace you, quietly, efficiently, gratefully, because now they can reset your salary to the bottom rung. But the most insidious part? They made you believe this was noble, that this was loyalty, that you're part of the family. So you stay, you over-deliver, you undercharge, you overcommit, you smile through the fatigue, telling yourself, I just have to push a little harder. But push toward what? Their goals? Their legacy? Their wealth? It's time to ask the question they hope you never do. If I'm the one doing the work, why am I not the one getting rich? Because here's the truth. You were never lazy. You were leveraged. Your hustle is real. Your pain is real. But the promise was fake. The sooner you see it, the sooner you can stop trading your life for someone else's passive income. You don't need to hustle harder. You need to build smarter, to own, to create, to reclaim your time, your energy, your upside. Because if you keep grinding in their machine, you'll wake up one day realizing you built an empire you were never allowed to live in.
The rise of performative work, when looking busy, replaces real impact. You're in a meeting, but nothing's really being said. There's a slide deck, there's a buzzword, there's a perfectly timed nod from your boss. You leave the room feeling like something happened, but deep down, you know it didn't. You just spent an hour performing productivity. Welcome to the age of performative work, where the goal isn't to move the needle, but to look like you're trying. It's everywhere. You send emails at midnight, not because it's urgent, but so your manager knows you're dedicated. You CC 5 extra people on an update, so no one can say they were left out. You write long messages full of empty language, attend virtual calls with your camera on but brain off, track tasks in 15 different apps, all while wondering, when will I have time to do real work? This is not efficiency, this is survival. Because in many workplaces, what matters isn't outcome, it's optics. Who looks busiest? Who talks the most in meetings? Who types with the most intensity during a Zoom call? And somewhere along the way, we replaced impact with appearance. We forgot that work is supposed to build something, not just maintain the illusion that something is being built. But here's the cost. When you spend your day pretending to work, you leave empty. Your hours vanish. Your soul shrinks. And the real tasks, the ones that require deep thought, courage, or creativity, are buried beneath performance. Because performative work has no risk. It doesn't require vulnerability. It doesn't challenge the system. It just plays the part, checks the box, sends the summary. And when everyone's faking busyness, no one has time to ask the real question. Is any of this even necessary? But questioning the process is dangerous, because if you pull the thread, the whole sweater of fake productivity might unravel. You might realize that half the things you do each day exist only to justify someone else's job, or worse, your own. And that's terrifying, because if your work has no impact, who are you? That's why the machine keeps running, not because it's efficient, but because everyone's too afraid to admit they don't know why it exists in the first place. But here's the truth. You don't need to look busy. You need to be brave. Brave enough to create something real. Brave enough to cut through the noise. Brave enough to say, this isn't working. Let's do less, but do it better. Real work doesn't always look impressive. Sometimes it's silent. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it doesn't fit in a spreadsheet. But it matters. And when you stop performing, you start producing something rare. Meaning. Freedom or treadmill? What are you really building? You tell yourself you're building something. A career, a future, a legacy. Every sleepless night, every task checked off, every weekend sacrificed. You say, it's for the life I want later. But what if later never comes? What if you're not building freedom, you're just running on a treadmill that was never meant to stop? Think about it. Each year you work harder, but the finish line keeps moving. You get a raise, but so do your expenses. You get a promotion, but now you're expected to be available 24/7. You buy a nicer car, but now you're locked into 5 more years of payments. And still you tell yourself, if I just push a little longer, I'll finally arrive. But where? Where is this magical destination where you finally feel safe, free, and whole? It doesn't exist, not in the system you're in, because the system was never designed to deliver freedom. It was designed to keep you moving, to chase, to strive, to reach, but never rest. You don't need a treadmill to go anywhere. You just need it to feel like you're going somewhere. And that's the trap. Motion replaces meaning. Progress replaces purpose. And before you know it, you've spent your entire life running in place, never stopping long enough to ask, what am I actually building? Is it mine? Does it matter? Will I look back and feel proud? Or just tired? Here's a harder truth. Not all movement is growth. Not all effort is investment. Not all work builds a life. Some work just keeps the machine running at your expense. And some goals,
aren't even yours. They were planted in your mind by advertising, comparison, ego, or fear. You climb the ladder only to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. But it's not too late to get off. You can pause. You can pivot. You can stop asking, how fast can I go? And start asking, where do I want to end up? Because real freedom isn't about speed. It's about direction. It's not about building more, but building better. And it starts with a choice to stop running blindly, to start living consciously, to remember that you weren't born to chase, you were born to create. So ask yourself, at the end of all this effort, will you have built something that sets you free or something that just keeps you busy? Because you deserve more than a life that only looks full but leaves you empty. From busyness to stillness, the power of conscious living. You've spent your whole life moving, from one task to the next, one goal to the next, 1 year to the next, always chasing, always striving, always in motion. But have you ever stopped long enough to ask, why am I in such a rush? What am I racing toward? And what am I running from? Because beneath all the hustle, the productivity, the noise, there is something you've been avoiding: stillness. And not just physical stillness, mental, emotional, spiritual. The kind of stillness that doesn't feel empty, but exposing. Because when everything goes quiet, you have no choice but to face yourself. And that's terrifying. It's easier to stay busy than it is to sit with your own thoughts. Easier to answer emails than to answer the question, am I truly happy? Easier to plan the next project than to ask why you don't feel fulfilled now. That's why so few people slow down, because stillness is confrontational. It reveals what busyness hides: your pain, your disconnection, your forgotten dreams, the little voice inside that's been whispering, this isn't the life you wanted. But here's the paradox. Stillness, though scary, is the only place where real life begins. Because in stillness, you stop performing and start becoming. You begin to hear your own voice instead of the world's expectations. You remember your values instead of chasing validation. You rediscover your vision instead of living on autopilot. Stillness doesn't mean stagnation. It means alignment. It means acting with clarity instead of compulsion, choosing with purpose instead of pressure. And from that space, something powerful happens. You stop reacting. You start creating. You stop chasing time. You start owning it. You stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, what do I want to do? This is the shift from unconscious busyness to conscious living. It's not about doing less, it's about doing what matters. Not because it's on your to-do list, but because it's in your soul. And yes, it's uncomfortable at first. The silence will feel loud. The pause will feel like falling behind. But stay with it. Because on the other side of that stillness is power. The kind of power that doesn't need to prove itself, that doesn't burn out, that doesn't ask for permission. The kind of power that comes from finally being present, awake, and alive. You don't need to do more. You need to feel more connected to what you do. And the doorway to that connection is stillness.
Reclaim your time. Practical ways to escape the productivity trap. Understanding the trap is the first step. Escaping it requires courage. Because the hardest chains to break are the ones you've been taught to wear with pride. You've been told to fill your time, to maximize your hours, to squeeze every second for output.
But what if the most radical thing you could do right now is stop? Not stop everything, not abandon your responsibilities, but stop living like your time belongs to everyone else. Because it doesn't. Your time is yours. Your life is yours. And if you want to reclaim both, you'll have to start making different choices. 1. Audit your time ruthlessly. Don't just guess where your hours go, track them. Every app, every meeting, every quick scroll. You'll be shocked at how much time you're spending looking productive instead of being intentional. Awareness is the first cut in the rope. 2. Redefine what enough means. You've been taught to chase more without ever defining it. More income, more output, more hours. But what if you paused and asked, what does enough look like for me? Enough money, enough work, enough time to rest. Once you define your enough, you can stop chasing everyone else's never-ending. 3. Create sacred boundaries. Turn off notifications. Say no without guilt. Build off time into your calendar like it's your most important meeting. Because it is. Every time you protect your time, you're telling the world, I am not just a producer, I am a person. 4. Shift from to-do lists to intentional living. Don't just ask, what do I need to get done? Ask, what deserves my energy today? Maybe it's a single meaningful project. Maybe it's resting. Maybe it's reconnecting with yourself or someone you love. Not everything urgent is important. Not everything on your list needs your soul. 5. Schedule nothing. Block time for silence, for wandering, for boredom even. Stillness is where ideas are born. Peace is where clarity is found. You don't find yourself in the noise. You find yourself in the space between it. 6. Break the reward loop. You're not a dog chasing treats. You don't need to earn water. You don't need to earn sunlight. You don't need to earn rest. Treat recovery as part of the process, not the prize at the end. Because if you wait until you deserve rest, you'll be waiting forever. 7. Measure impact, not activity. Ask yourself at the end of the day, what did I really build today? Not how many emails you sent, not how many calls you answered, but what did you contribute that mattered? Even if it was just being present with your child or being kind to yourself. That counts. That always counts. Reclaiming your time won't always be easy. The world will resist it. People will guilt you. Your old patterns will scream for you to stay on the treadmill. But every time you pause, protect, and prioritize, you reclaim not just time, but yourself. Because the goal isn't to do more in less time. It's to feel alive in the time you have. This is your life, not your calendar, not your inbox, not your LinkedIn profile. You are the owner of your time, and the moment you start acting like it is the moment everything begins to change. The final truth. You were never lazy, just misled. You've been told a story your whole life, that if you're not constantly moving, you're falling behind, that if you're resting, you're weak, that if you're not producing, you're wasting space. So every time you felt tired, you called yourself lazy. Every time you paused to breathe, you heard the inner voice say, you're not doing enough. And when the burnout came, when your mind shut down and your body gave out, you didn't blame the system, you blamed yourself. You thought you were broken, unmotivated, undisciplined. But what if none of that was ever true? What if your body wasn't failing, it was trying to protect you? What if your so-called laziness was just wisdom disguised as fatigue? A signal, a boundary, a whisper that said, "This pace is not sustainable. This pressure is not human. This life is not yours." The truth is, you were never lazy. You were exhausted from the lie. The lie that told you your worth lives in your output, that your value is only as real as your productivity, that rest must be earned and joy must be delayed. The truth is, you were never unmotivated. You were unaligned. You weren't lacking drive. You were lacking meaning. You were running, just not toward anything that fed your soul. And the truth is, you were never behind. You were simply stuck in a system designed to keep you chasing. But now you see it. You see how deeply they programmed you to grind yourself into the ground and smile while doing it, to sacrifice health for hustle, dreams for deadlines, life for a lifestyle that isn't even yours. But here's the good news. You don't have to live like that anymore. You can rewrite the story. You can measure success in moments, not metrics. You can define your value by your presence, not your performance. You can stop asking, "Am I doing enough?" and start asking, "Am I becoming who I was meant to be?" And when that old voice returns, the one that says you're lazy, slow, selfish for resting, you can smile and say, "No, I'm healing." Because healing is not inactivity. It is revolution. It is returning to yourself after years of being pulled in every direction but your own. So let this be your reminder. You don't owe the world your burnout. You don't owe the system your silence. You don't owe anyone the version of you that only knows how to work. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself truth. You owe yourself back to yourself. And the moment you choose stillness over shame, rest over racing, self over system, is the moment you stop surviving and start living.